Coastal Magic Convention is a reader-author weekend in Daytona Beach, Florida each year. As much as we love having authors with us, we know not everyone can make it to the beach. Thankfully, we have a virtual option that allows us to chat with additional authors we love. Hi, I'm Delorianne, and I'm with Coastal Magic Convention, a convention my sister started 10 plus years ago as a way to get authors to Florida. And I'm going to be speaking today with someone I discovered through a friend about a year ago and am devouring his books. His name is Ben Aaronovitch. And I think if you like paranormal, if you like urban fantasy, if you like magic, I think you're gonna love him.
It's nice to be here.
So how have you been keeping busy lately? Just a little bit of writing?
I essentially have no life, right? I just write. And people go, "Oh, don't you want to go and do this?" And I go, "No, I don't have enough time to write. I want to write." It's because success came quite late. So I had to do all these horrible things when I was younger, like work and all that kind of stuff. And now that I can just write for a living, this is like the most fun you can have. Like, people pay you to do something you would do anyway. So I just like to write. So I have been basically writing. I mean, occasionally I get dragged away to a convention or something, but mostly I like to write.
Yeah.
And I'm unashamedly boring that way. I feel authors should be boring.
Well, the thing about writing though is that you can imagine anywhere. Like no matter where you are, you can imagine something more. So I don't know that would be considered boring.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's boring, obviously, but there's a lot of things I don't think are boring, like binge watching TV series and things that some people wouldn't like. I cultivate the life of the mind. I put it pretentiously. I'm really lazy. I mean, truthfully, I'm just lazy. I couldn't imagine anywhere, but I like to imagine sitting in front of my computer writing,
Yeah.
or playing World of Warships or something.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know. I don't really think about it. I just kind of get on with it. I got deadlines usually. It's like, oh God,
Yeah.
no, you know.
Well, I noticed over the past few months you've been getting out there a little bit more. You've had some book signings and appearances and stuff like that. How was that getting out in front of fans, real life people again?
Oh, well, that was nice. I mean, after COVID, well, I actually really enjoyed COVID, which is a terrible thing to say, which given the horrific terror it was for everyone else. But from a writer's point of view, oh no, I'm stuck at home and people can't visit and annoy me. How terrible. So, I mean, once I'm out, I like doing them, right? But I'm always kind of like, oh, I don't want to go.
Mhm.
I'm a very, I think this, you'll notice a motif with me is that laziness forms a fairly core principle in my life. I feel that one should build on one's strengths, and one of my strengths is that I'm incredibly slothful. But yeah, it's nice. I mean, I went to Germany, and I also go on research trips. I don't just go. I have to go. I've been going to Scotland quite a lot for research there because the next book I'm writing now, not the next book that's coming out, is set in Scotland, and so therefore I went. I've been going up to Aberdeen and wandering around slowly, basically from cafe to cafe. My research principle is to find a series of cafes and just walk slowly from cafe to cafe, absorbing the atmosphere. And so that's what I've been doing. But also I went to Germany. I had a couple of trips to Germany. It's nice. I like meeting people. I like signing books. I just don't. You just have to get me out of my chair. Basically, once I'm out of my chair, I'm fine.
Yeah.
You know.
I think you and I might have been separated at birth because I have the same opinion.
People put too much stress on movement, I think.
Yeah. Well, speaking about research, I have seen in an interview before where you were talking about maps and how basically a lot of people ask about maps, and a lot of your stories happen in London and how big that map would be. But you really do use all of London in your stories. I mean, that takes a lot of work.
Well, not really. I mean, I live in London, and I have an Oyster card, which is I don't know what you call it in America. It's a Met card. It's the thing for the
Yeah.
transport. And I just go around London, and do the same thing I do everywhere else. I go from a cafe to cafe to cafe, occasional pub.
Hmm.
I mean, I go where the story takes me. Usually I have a rough idea of where the story starts, but often I don't really know where it's going to go. So I find myself going, I must go to Hillingdon. If you're from London, that's hilarious, by the way, Hillingdon.
Hmm.
The rest of the time, I don't always know. I mean, I went to Manchester. I didn't know I was going to Manchester, and I ended up in Manchester the last time for the book that's out now. So I like to do research. I like to use all of London because I mean I am a Londoner, so it's not weird to me. So I don't think of London. London for me is not the bit that the sort of like the touristy bit of London, the Houses of Parliament and the St Paul's Cathedral.
Hmm.
That's kind of like background. That's like what's there when I go out on top of Kite Hill and I look out and I can see all that kind of stuff out there. But it's not London. London for me is a series of suburbs and boroughs and built up areas and
Hmm.
high streets and schools and clubs and cinemas that I went to. When you're born somewhere like London, I assume this is true of probably New Yorkers as well. When you're born somewhere in a big city, so you don't see it as the kind of great big place where all the films take place. You see it as like your school where you grew up, where you went to, I mean, if
Yeah.
you church, where you went to church, where you met your first snog. It was in that doorway there. That was like when you got off with someone for the first time. That's where you got club. That's where you got drunk and fell over for the first time. All the kind of little bits of your life, right? That happens in whatever for everyone else. It's the great metropolis. For you, it's actually a sort of small town. I mean, it's a very big small town, but it's
Right.
basically a small town. And so, like most Londoners, London is made up of a sort of places I've been. So I used to go clubbing quite a lot down in Brixton, and so therefore Brixton is clubland. You see, that's what Brixton is doing, and also Brixton Market. And then I lived there for a bit, and there was a baked potato shop that I particularly liked, and so like it's baked potato land in a way that it's just it's not. Ridley Road is where I used to go shopping. I used to live in Stamford Hill. These are all places that kind of like I associate with different things other than kind of like urban fantasy. To be honest. So it's very easy for me to go somewhere and go, oh, what if a dragon came out there? I mean, like one of my earliest memories is wondering what it would be like if you were standing on a tube platform and like suddenly this dragon just goes past you like, from one platform to the other. It's like 12 o'clock at night, you're waiting for the last train and you think it's coming, you look and this dragon just goes. Like, ah!
Oh my God.
And then you spend the rest of your life going, what the fuck was that?
Oh my God. Could you imagine the people on the platform seeing that? Oh my goodness gracious.
Well, I think it's even better if you're on your own because then it's like, I saw it going. Yeah.
Then you can't tell anybody.
Exactly. I mean, the problem, of course, is once you do a bit of research, you know that there's at least 8 cameras that would have picked it up going through the station. But hey, let's not let realism get in the way of a good story.
It's all magic anyway, right? They can defy the cameras.
Well, yes. Well, depends on how you're arranging your masquerade, really.
Well, that's true. That is true. Speaking of, can you, for people who don't know, because a lot of readers know you, and a lot of readers, you're going to be this is the first introduction to you. So can you give us a little recap of what Rivers of London, what this series is, and then, where your spoiler-free vision is going?
Okay. Well, if we're going to break it down by genre, it's basically a fantasy police procedural. So it's if you think of urban fantasy is usually made up by mashing various genres together. So some of it's, for example, the Dresden Files is fantasy noir, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's all kind of down these mean streets, a man in a duster will walk, and mine is fantasy, but my hero is a police officer who actually does proper police work. So it's not like television police work. It's like proper police work. So I basically write a police procedural about a guy. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. Called Peter Grant,
Mm-hmm.
who's very lonely, just finished his probationary period, so he's just about to become a proper fully fledged constable, and he's guarding a crime scene because that's kind of like the jobs you get when you're at that kind of stage of your career. In the middle of the night in Covent Garden, and he hears a voice, and the voice goes, "Psst," and he goes over and he finds this guy, and "I saw the whole thing, Gov," and he goes, "Well, do you want to?" Do you want to come down the station and make a statement? He said, "I can't come down the station on account of me being dead." And because Peter thinks he means like he's worried about his safety, he goes, "No, we can protect you." No, no, no. I'm brown bread, and he steps out into the light, and he's transparent, and he's a ghost, right? And Peter's like,
What?
but the crucial thing that makes him our hero, is that having established that he is a ghost, he then takes a statement from him because
Yes. Oh my
and
God.
that's basically if you want to sum up my series, it's about a guy who, when confronted with the supernatural, will try and take a statement from it. A proper statement written down in his notebook and everything, right? And that's basically Peter Grant. And then he gets involved with the branch of the police that deals with the supernatural. And he becomes probably the first apprentice in about 50 years to actually learn magic, or at least the first official apprentice. And that's the way. And basically, hilarity ensues, as they say. I can't really say any more with that. There's murders and death, action and adventure and romance and all the sorts of good, crunchy things you want in an urban fantasy.
Yeah.
In London, and lots of
You
sightseeing.
you had me in that very first book, and it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna love this, because there's so much about Peter. Like, he's just starting out. He's trying, he's trying to figure things out. He thinks he's got it figured out, and then the world is like, nope. You've got this whole other side of things.
I always think Peter Grant's great strength. I mean, you don't have Weebles in America, do you? These little toys that had like metal round bits at the bottom, and you knock them over and they bounce back up
Weeble
again.
wobble and they don't
Yeah,
fall down. Yeah, we had when we were young.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I didn't think you had them now. Although, if you put like superheroes on them, I bet you could get a good range.
I bet so, yeah.
But my point being is, Batman wobbles, Peter. My point is that Peter's basically a Weeble, right? You just knock him down and he just bounces right back up in your face, and has, to the annoyance of many villains. That's just like indomitable, and that's the quality that I really like. This quality, because it's sort of different from. I wanted to make him as different from, not from necessarily. I wasn't really thinking of urban fantasy heroes. I was thinking of police detectives in the British television tradition, which is like grumpy middle-aged men or women who are drinking themselves into a divorce and hate the job. And I want someone young and enthusiastic who's going to go out and go, yes, I love it. And then when he finds out about magic, he's, oh, give me some of that. It's like. And I wanted to avoid that kind of, oh God, no, the world is such a grim, terrible place.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have that attitude. It's just an intrinsically optimistic person. And despite his family background, which is terrible in some ways.
Right. The optimism that Peter has is amazing. And his journey of learning the magic is hysterical. Like, how many times he makes a mistake and then he blows something up, or like, just it really is a lot of fun. How did you decide what magical stream, I guess, you were going to take for the books?
Well, I mean, I'm basically a person with a science fiction brain writing a fantasy novel. So I've just got that kind of a brain. I'd be writing science fiction, except it involves way too much research these days, and also modern science fiction has become very obsessed with themes I'm not very interested in. So, like, genetics and stuff, which is like, I want spaceships, ray guns. So, but I still got that kind of SF brain. And so therefore I can't just have a magic system where shit happens, whatever, right? I have to know why. I have to know why it happens. So I basically, and I can't tell you because that's basically the fabric of the universe. It's the ultimate question, the fabric of the universe question. But there is a systemic rationale behind the magic. And I thought, well, what is it you're doing when you're making a spell? It can't just be the words. I mean, Latin's not particularly magical. So, where did it come from? What's this happening? And I thought, well, Terry Pratchett wrote these
Mhm.
science of Discworld books, and in a footnote in one of the Terry Pratchett books, it refers to the fact that Isaac Newton wrote more about alchemy than he did about physics, right?
Mhm.
And it had this little apologetic thing. Oh well, he was a genius. It's an often thing that geniuses do. They go off and they go into subjects that aren't really their field. And I thought, well, I don't think that's actually true of Isaac Newton. I think he didn't have fields. I just think he was like a mad person. But it also said at the bottom, it said, but if anyone was going to find magic, it would have been Isaac Newton. A little light bulb went over my head, boom, and I went, okay, right, Isaac Newton is the fan. And he created what's known as the Newtonian synthesis, which is
Mm.
he discovered a systemic way of doing magic. So there's been lots and lots and lots of people doing magic in various traditions all over the world, but it was he who kind of discovered a systemic tradition that made it reliable, much more
Mhm.
reliable. And so therefore he founds magic, but he doesn't like it because there's no mathematics. He can't find a mathematical basis behind it. So that's one of the reasons it keeps secret, is because Isaac Newton was slightly embarrassed by it. And So I have basically human magic, which is the magic done by Peter. Peter is learning Newtonian
Mhm.
magic. Newtonian magic is all about um, for making a shape in your mind, and then you
Mhm.
assign a word to that shape, and so therefore so
Mhm.
that you can repeat it, and then other people can write down spells because you know what each shape associated with the spell is, and that's what a spell is. And so you're not actually, and you tend to say it out loud because as a mnemonic, but you don't have to, right?
Right.
And so therefore that's what a spell is. I thought that's what a spell is, right? It's not actually a spell. It's basically making a shape in your mind. It's like, and it's not like there's no kind of like standing, anger or that doesn't help you. It has to be the right shape, right? It,
Right.
if you're excited or in love or passionate about something, that just means you make a mistake and it will go horribly wrong, right? What you have to do is you have to be very close. So the magicians are all very, very, very controlled, right? Very, very, which is,
Yeah.
if you think about it, suits upper class English people very, very well. That's stiff upper totally no emotions will affect me whatsoever. Of which, so that, as you can see where Nightingale comes from. So,
Yes.
and why he's the most powerful magician anyone ever knows, right?
Mhm.
At the same time, I wanted some whimsy. I wanted some mad, wild magic as well.
Yes.
And that's where the river goddesses and gods come in, and the Fae. Their magic is completely different. Their magic is just full of whimsy and caprice and randomness, because they don't even think about it. They're not really thinking, I will do magic. They're just, it's just kind of built into the
Right.
fabric of it. And
So organic and natural from them.
yeah, but also it's, as Beverly says, Beverly is a river goddess for those who don't know who the and potential friend, and she explains to Peter that sometimes the river floods because she's in a bad mood, and sometimes she's in a bad mood because there's excessive rainfall fall in a catchment area, and the river
Mhm.
floods, and she can't always tell which is which.
Right.
And so they're much more so that they don't always know whether they're controlling things or things are controlling them, which makes them just like us, except with quite a great deal more collateral damage in the kind
Yeah.
of floodplain.
Well, that's another thing. The rivers, the people representing the rivers, the people as the rivers is such a cool concept that, I'd never seen or read anything like that before. How did that idea come to fruition?
Well, because rivers are always portrayed as having personalities.
Hmm.
Father Thames has been portrayed in pictures, and there's a statue of him at a place called Lachlade up the river.
Hmm.
It's basically, I decided it was an animist universe. So everything has basically some level of spirit.
Hmm.
But rivers tend to be, for reasons that I can't explain because it would give everything away. Um, Rivers are particularly prone to kind of like developing personalities, and
Hmm.
I don't know where the idea came from. It just sort of arrived, okay. But I mean, it's not exactly a new idea. I mean, this is the idea of that you will have river spirits is not exactly a new idea. It's not unique to me. I didn't make it up. It's all over the world. Lots of people in Japan and Nigeria, places like that. That's an established part of the belief system, is that rivers would have spirits. and other things. And if you look at folk, folk tales, things, inanimate objects and people and animals are always having like, Brer Rabbit and all that. They're always having like personalities. I just went with that. Are you?
I thought that it was such a unique take. And I think what you did, not only with the River Thames, but all of your characters, is you put perfect chaos and these beautiful people, but these beautiful people are real. The mouth on some of these characters, it puts it in right in today, and not polished to the extreme to where they're not relatable.
Well, I think part of it was because they're London rivers, so they can have a mouth, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah.
tradition, they're going to have a mouth. More worse than that, they're actually Anglo-Nigerian Londoners, so they're going to have a double mouth. Yeah, I don't know. I just wrote them. They just turned up and got put on the page. I don't. I mean, I love to take credit for this like deep thought that went into that, but no, they just kind of like emerged as I was writing, and it just seemed obvious to me what they would be like. And I like the idea. I mean, part of one of the things I'm trying to do that's different from some urban fantasies, and I'm not. This isn't a criticism of other urban fantasies, because, like I said, where you put the masquerade or not put the masquerade is kind of important, because you have to come up with these decisions. Is I wanted very much the people, the fantasy characters, to be integrated into the real world, and so
Yeah.
the rivers walk around. They kind of don't live in a. It's not like Neverwhere where there's like a world under London. This is like it's they're walking past you. You're going into pubs. They're sitting in pubs that you go into. They're real people. They just happen to be also river goddesses or fae or dryads or whatever. But they're also real people. But they have limitations. That's the thing. They're not quite like us, because they actually, part of their life is controlled by an external factor. So the river goddesses, where they are in relation to their rivers is like quite important to them in a way that isn't to us, obviously.
Right.
They get homesick. They get really homesick.
Some of the conversations, it's so funny. They'll be talking, and you think, okay, the scene is about A and B, and then they'll say something, and it'll be like, oh my God, where in the world did that come from? Because it was such a one-liner, like you took it with such skill and precision, that one line that made everything else in that scene just seem like, oh my God, what is going to happen next? Because that was freaking hilarious.
I wish I knew what you were talking about, because that's not how it comes across to me when I'm writing it. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to come up with a line. That'll do.
Well, it's hard to pull out just one, because it happens so often. It'll be like, oh, Peter will be running down the street. It's like, this is not what I expected to be doing when I had to go down to do this, that, and the other thing. And then it's like, oh my God, how in the world did he get here?
Yes, Peter's position of pretty perpetual surprise, enthusiastic surprise. That's how I kind of think of Peter. He's like, be surprised. All is like, and I mean, this is what I'm not going to say because it's a spoiler, but this is what the love of his life sees in him. Is that kind of like enthusiasm and surprise. So, because people sometimes ask me, they go, "What the hell does she see in him?"
I think he's lovely. He's lovely.
People go like, like given who she is and given who he is, they're like, what does she see in him? It's a surprise. It's just that perpetual kind of enthusiastic surprise. It's like a puppy, basically, in some ways.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that, shiny.
Shiny. So he has some pretty great friends in this, and I think that there are some, depending on where people are in the books, on whether or not are they friend or foe. Let's just put it that way. How did you go about populating Peter's friendships? Like, was it a matter of he needs this kind of person, or did you have this person in mind and then you figure out how do they relate to each other?
Well, I don't think of very few characters where I thought to myself, this is going to be Peter's friend. I mean, the exception is Leslie, who is his friend right at the beginning of the books, right? Everybody else had a plot function, and then the fact that it became his friend later just kind of like happened. Like,
Yeah.
like they're there to open doors or provide backup going into, like Gilead.
Mhm.
I mean, I needed a police character to go down some stairs with him into creepy,
Yeah.
into the basement, right? And I just, quick, character, I don't know, Smiley, hijab, right? And the next thing I know, she's a bloody character. And I mean, I didn't, and I thought she was there for that one scene, and then she's just like there. Then she's in another scene, and I'm thinking, oh God, no, this character's going to be. And then in the next book, I needed a DC for. So why
Mhm.
make up another DC when I already had a perfectly good DC ready to go? And the next thing I know, she's got a plot line, a love life, family.
Yeah.
And with Jagat Kumar, it's like the BTP guy. It's like next thing I know, he's talking about his wife and the kids and fish and chip night, and I'm sitting there going, okay.
It's like, where did all you people come from?
Because you just think of these things while you're writing. People are writing dialogue, and you just think, "Oh, fish and chip night." Like, why? Because I wanted it to be funny. I wanted Jagat to say, because in that particular thing, he's being dragged out in the middle of the night, and he goes, "Oh my, the wife's not going to be happy." It's why is the wife not going to be happy? Because it's fish
Yeah.
and chip night, right? And it's like, it was just basically an idea that just popped into my head when I got to that bit. And a lot of characters arrive on the spur of the moment. Some characters are planned ahead of time. Leslie was planned ahead of time. Nightingale
Mhm.
was planned ahead of time. Dr. Waleed, I needed a pathologist.
Mhm.
Needed a pathologist, so I just sort of wrote down the first character that came into my head. There he was, my pathologist, Scottish Muslim, right? Yay! Right, gastroenterology's answer to Cat Stevens, and then which means nothing to Americans whatsoever.
Yeah. I remember listening to Cat Stevens when I was younger. So I think you might still have some
I think you'll find that anyone under
of
the
the
age
majority.
of the hell he is,
Yeah. Well,
or what the reference means. I mean, they might know who he is, but not know what the reference means. They might be into old music, but not really know the story. And
right.
I mean, I've been in America. I would have said, gastroenterologist's answer to Muhammad Ali.
Right.
Or rather, it would have been funny. Gastroenterologist's answer to Cassius Clay would have been a good example of that. But it's not quite the same because the conversion is slightly different because he's white. So that's not a one-on-one kind of comparison. It doesn't work.
Right. Something you just said sparks another question that I have for you. You write so full, and we kind of touched about a little bit earlier, but you write so full. And what I mean by that is the side stories to your individual characters. It basically rounds everybody out, whether they're on the page for 5 seconds or whether they are a main character. You have full characters in your stories, and I want to tell you how much I enjoy your diversity in your cast. And it's not just a word, it's something that feels so natural in your stories. The lead character is a Black man. He's got all of these people that he interacts with. It shows the fabric of the world, and I really feel like you have incorporated the world in these books. It's not just one thing. It's not just two things. There's a wide variety of genders, of ethnicities, of religious backgrounds, of practices and faiths and sexual orientation. There really is a wide variety of the world represented in your books in such a natural way.
I'm always amazed other people don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, for one, the book's set in London. Well, most of the
Mhm.
books are set in London, which is a very diverse city. I grew up
Mhm.
there. I grew up with very diverse area with diverse friends, and
Mm.
that. So it never occurred to me not to be like that. But also from a kind of technical point of view as a writer, it's great.
Mhm.
I mean, you get so many words out of diversity. It's like if everyone's the same, it's all good. Oh, what differentiates that character from that character? I don't know. They got red hair. So boring. So I'm doing this because I'm setting something in Scotland, which is a slightly less diverse area, and so therefore I'm going redhead, brown hair. I'm trying to come up with different words for pasty. That's not. I don't want to be insulting to the Scots, but just.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something. I mean, it's set in Aberdeen, which is a notoriously pale place.
Right.
So, although not as
Mm.
pale as people think it is, which Peter thinks, oh, Aberdeen's not as white as he thinks it is. He thought,
Yeah.
but diversity is fun. You can have fun with diversity. It's fun to have, like in False Value, it's fun to have Victor. I don't know. He was just fun. Again in False Value, them doing the cinch thing where they try pretending to have a cinch to avoid suspicion, and it's Peter and a guy. That's just funny. It's just a fun thing to do, and to do
Mhm.
it and then not think about it, to just like have it just go past as if that's
Mhm.
kind of enjoyable. I like that kind of thing. It's like when you're watching. Have you been watching Andor?
I have not yet. I have not started that.
Andor, there's lots of little kind of not details as in Easter eggs, but like just lots of little details of life going on in the background of all the kind of street scenes and everything. And that's what I think of it as. All of these things are happening all the time around us. And
Hmm.
what I'm doing is I'm just putting in what actually happens all the time around us.
Right.
Right? Because I don't have an agenda or anything. I'm not going, I'm not making a point. I'm just putting it as it is. And as I learn about, because I didn't know. There's also things I just didn't know about. And as soon as I find out about it, I throw it in the book because why not? Ha! That's 400 words there. Excellent. That gets me through a day's writing.
Yeah. Well, what's so funny about that? The history. You talk about where you learned, you learned this, so it's got to go in. There are so many times where it's like, okay, this factoid, this history in the book, is that real or is that something you made up? Is that magic? Is this a magical history or is this a real history? And sometimes I'll be like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. And I'll go and I'll look. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is what you're talking about. And then other things, you will say it in the same authority as if you were talking about something real. And I find that fascinating because, again, it brings it to the roundness of your world.
I call it the 90% rule. Right? If
Yeah.
90% of everything is true, right, you can slip in 10%. And one of the reasons, I make an effort. I do actually make an effort on this to make policing and my mundane London and the policing and all the other thing is as realistic as possible. Because even if people don't know the details of like the British policing system, you can smell it. You can the
Yeah.
smell when it's true, right? They go, that's got the smell of authenticity. Aha, right? And that has two effects. One, it means you can slip the fantasy in, almost kind of like sneak it in under this kind of disguise of all this real truth.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is it's so much funnier if like real solid realistic policing hits the fantasy world, so that Peter is stuffed because he doesn't have a form for arresting werewolves or something. The example I always give, which I've never used because I don't have werewolves at the moment, is if Peter arrests a werewolf, right, and he has to lock them up, and he puts them in the cell, is he then violating cruelty to the animal statutes? But if he puts the werewolf in a kennel, is he then violating the guys under human rights legislation? Right?
Oh my goodness gracious.
What exactly is he supposed to do in that circumstance, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's what I like. See, that for me is the appeal of the story, is taking realistic policing and then smacking it into the face of vampires, It's like, and also asking yourself, what would you, because like, have you ever watched something and you go, well, why are you doing that? Why are you taking, why have you taken a stake to it's the 20th century, why 21st century, why have you taken a stake to a vampire party, lob a bloody phosphorus grenade into
Uh-huh.
that's why in the first book I have that scene to show you that these are people who don't fuck around with vampires.
Right.
I will stake you with a stake. No,
No.
white phosphorus grenade into the basement.
Yeah.
You know, and
Technology has improved.
yes, and all that kind of thing. You know, how do you deal with these things when you know you have river goddesses with waterproof phones and whose main
Mhm.
is keeping their, which is this is I find particularly keeping their hair from getting frizzy, so they have to kind of various strategies for keeping their hair straight, their straightened hair, and it's like no, or
Yeah.
the case in Ephra's point of view, just has extensions and lets it get wet, you know.
Yeah. 9 has come out. You're
Yes,
writing 10. Are you writing 10 or are you writing
I'm writing
a
10. So
you're
there are the
writing
novels and then there's the novellas, right? So I have written the next two novellas because of timing and also COVID, right? Which meant I was stuck
yeah.
at home. And the two novellas were particularly well suited because one was set in Wisconsin, and I wasn't going to visit Wisconsin. I mean, I'm sure Wisconsin's a lovely place, but it was a small town in the north of Wisconsin. And I just looked at, when I went on Google Maps and I tried to get routes there, it just said, no, you don't drive, you're just not going to ever get there. There wasn't even a Greyhound bus, nothing. Right? So I thought, okay, Wisconsin, it's all going to have to be in my imagination, right? So, but unfortunately, it's not hard to get information. And I had some friends, American friends, who went, no, we don't say that. That's not how people talk.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other one was also set in New York, but it was set in New York in 1920s. So, I mean, I've been to New York myself, so I've walked the mean streets of New York, well, the city that never sleeps. But the 1920s is completely different. So that would have been a lot of intellectual research anyway,
Right.
and New York being, a loud, brash city, most of its electronic footprint is enormous. There's
Yes.
almost nothing you can find out about New York that they haven't already put onto the internet, so that you know all about them because they are New York and you're going to know everything about them, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I wrote those while we were not in lockdown, but where we're going in and out of lockdown, and so that I could start the next one. So the next book will be the Wisconsin story, which the title of which will be announced soon. And then the next book will be the one I'm writing now. The next novel will be the one I'm writing now, which will come out sometime, hopefully, if I can get it done, the year after. And then there'll be another novella after that.
Yeah.
We're aiming at like one release a year because people get shirty if I don't.
Yeah. Well, how do you know? Because
How do I know people get shirty? They
yeah,
tweet,
they probably tell you.
they tweet me on Twitter. They go, "Where's the next book going? Hurry up, right after."
Well, with Rivers of London, with this series being police procedural, and I mean, in theory, it could go on, forever.
Well,
How
that
do you
was
know?
part of the appeal. That was part of the appeal of it.
Yeah. Well, how do you know you have the right next story? Like, what do you have to have before you're like, yes, this is the track I'm going. This is the story that's
I
next.
usually need at least a location and a murder,
Yeah.
right? Or and a cause of murder, right? It doesn't matter
Mhm.
how vague the cause of the murder is. Jealousy will do. As long as I have some rough idea why
Mhm.
why the first corpse, or in the case of Foxglove Summer, what wasn't a murder, it was a kidnapping. But as long as I know
Mhm.
what the case is and what the situation is, it doesn't really matter that I have no idea about any of the rest of it. I usually think of that about halfway through, as a procrastination thing, about halfway through the book I'm supposed to be writing. So I get halfway through the book and I suddenly go, oh, I've just had a brilliant idea for the next book. And it's like, that's my brain going, oh, I don't want to do this. This is hard work. Let's think about something else. So at the moment, I'm on book 10. And my
Mhm.
brain is already going, oh, I've just had a really good idea for book 11. And just shut up. We're supposed to be writing. Never mind book bloody 11.
That's when you put it on your whiteboard behind you, and
No,
then
no,
you
no, no,
move
no.
on.
I actually put it on one of these. Where is it? I don't need to plug it, but this is a writer's notebook. And yes, right. See, so I put them on one,
Nice.
and it's specially designed, but it's not so much that it's specially designed for writers, and it's all kind of got sections and notebooks and the corner rips. I don't know when that started. The main thing is the paper is very high quality and it lies flat from one end to the other, which is what you
Oh,
want in a notebook, right?
yes.
It's like never
Uh-huh.
mind anything else. What you want in a notebook is it lies flat from one end to the other because you never know where you're going to be making notes. And that way I can just, because I used to try and I used to have a huge, big fat notebook that looked very kind of Indiana Jones. But the trouble with that was is it was terrible to write in and I forgot what was in it. So
Oh,
now I have one notebook per project.
that's a great idea.
I have one notebook project. So I have one notebook that's kind of like, I'll give you an example. You know, that's like just where I take all the notes for what I'm doing. And it's also so I can sell my papers to a university at some point.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but also this is useful. You see, I can take this stuff to Scotland and I can sit on the train within it because I'm not very good at. I can't use a laptop on a train. I'm really bad at that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I don't take notes on a computer. I'm not one of these. But I can't do it on a phone because my thumbs are too big. And so that kind of works. So that's the system I'm using now. You know, in 3 years' time, I'll come up with another system because I'm a faddish kind of person that way. And I've got a pile of empty books behind me which you can't see, but I've got loads of notebooks which I just because I'm one of those people. Oh, I will have 9, and I'll probably, my son will probably dig them out after I'm dead and go, what the hell are these?
The jewels, though, that have got to be in there. Absolutely.
I don't know. I can't read my own handwriting. There's got to be some stuff in here. I mean, admittedly, I mean, it's just nope.
I know I have a question for you in a bit about the different avenues, the different formats this story has evolved into. But before we get to that, I want to make sure that we circle back to Peter's family. And Peter's mom and dad,
Yes.
they are both amazing and also not the best of parents at the same time.
They are terrible parents.
But they're still such a colorful part of who Peter is. And I think his dad with his music and the jazz, and that's the way he shows his love and appreciation. And I think there's something very sweet about that, regardless of all the other stuff that has happened in Peter's life. I think that's such a special moment you created within the series.
Well, I mean, the thing is that Peter's dad is very high maintenance because his addiction and the fact that he's a jazz musician. Anyone's ever met a jazz musician, they're high maintenance. And in some ways, Peter's always been in competition with his dad for his mum's attention, which is split between not just between him and Peter, his dad and his Peter, but also between the entire extended family that goes all the way across, like several continents now. Atlanta, they're in Georgia, they're in London, they're in some of them are in Copenhagen, others are still back in Sierra Leone, and this is like this large extended network that she's not in charge of. She's in competition with quite a lot of it as well. I mean, this kind of feuds that are going on in this family. And Peter has always been kind of like not an afterthought, but he's always been like expected to get on with it, right? And not too many problems. And so therefore Peter has got that, rather like Abigail has a very similar problem. I didn't realize this until I was thinking about it, that Abigail and Peter have that in common, in that they tend to have to play second fiddle to another person within their own family, that they're not out of any maliciousness, but just out of circumstance, although with Abigail it's more tragic. And but also that drives them to be outward people. So I mean, I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't say to myself, I will create this character like this, so he will be an outward person, and full of this. That's when I look at it, I go, right, this is why he's an outward person, because this is one of the what he has to have been an outward person, because he's not going to get a lot of the kind of emotional input that he wants. He's not going to get it from his parents. Yeah. Even if they want to, they don't. They're not. I don't think some of them. They're not really that capable of it. They're terrible parents when I think about it. So that's Peter, and extends to a lot of his character. But it also means that he's very stoic.
Right.
Like, the children of drug addicts tend to be a bit stoic because they're
Hmm.
just facing the circumstances that they have no control over, and so they learn to kind of endure and get on with
Right.
it. And I don't mean that in a good way. I just mean that's the way your personality. So you have to have a flat level of emotional response. But this then perfectly works for him in magic, you see, because he's capable of maintaining focus in the
Right.
middle of the fight, and which is you have to be able to do be a successful magician. You have to be able to do that while someone like hits you in the face. That's the and Peter
Yes.
can do that. It's what Nightingale can do. You whack Nightingale, he'll just magic you across the room because it doesn't even break his concentration. Oh, it's a tank. I can do all that.
Mhm.
That's and Peter has that. It's the quality that Peter has. Although, unlike Nightingale, he has a tendency to experiment, which Nightingale never did. Nightingale's just very much kind of like, yeah, I love to do this. He's like a jock. Nightingale's basically the magic equivalent of a jock.
Right.
Yeah, I'm really good at this.
Mm. I sometimes wonder, like Peter, I mean, Nightingale, the way he's voiced in the audiobook, it's such a distinct sound. But sometimes I wonder, like, if we were to be in his head, is he rolling his eyes like in the back of his head when Peter's doing some of these things? Like,
Possibly. Then Peter's rolling his eyes when Nightingale does certain things.
yeah.
It's a lot of mutual eye rolling. I'm rolling her eyes, and Leslie's rolling her eyes. It's
Oh,
tremendous.
Leslie does it on the outside, though. Leslie does it on the outside. She's like, "You are the stupidest MFer I have ever seen right now. What are you doing?"
See, that's the thing. But I think Leslie has a lot of respect for Peter in a weird way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
She would nearly be as nasty to him if she didn't like him.
Yeah.
And that's a very estuary kind of working class family thing where you show your affection through being horrible to someone. We all know people like that.
Yeah. What about Molly and her cooking? Some of the stuff she comes up with, I mean, as the stories go along, she gets better, but oh my God, some of those earlier concoctions. How did you have fun making that up, or was that like personal
These are
experience?
proper traditional English food. That is like kind of syrup pudding, lots of syrup, lots of tripe. This is, remember, she's been cooking since the 1910s, 1920s.
Yeah.
So therefore, people cook like that. Back
Mm-hmm.
people were, people didn't used to waste food the way people do now. Tripe was a perfectly acceptable ingredient. Brains and brawn and sheep's heads and things like that. These are all, we waste a lot of food now. We waste
Mm-hmm.
animal products that we just waste, or it gets ground up into dog food or something. But people used to eat that, and it was perfectly respectable to have brawn, which is horrible. I think is
Yeah.
and likes to live on. And I'm always find it hilarious when people talk about sweetbreads in fantasy novels as if they're like cakes, right?
They probably don't know.
Sweetbreads. That's not what a sweetbread is.
Exactly.
Seriously, that's not what a sweetbread is. Trust me on this, right?
Uh-huh.
I did enough research to really go, but I just thought it was funny. And she will come out with that stuff again. If occasionally she reverts to traditional, but the whole idea that they keep giving her cookbooks, and then she gets mad with them. So it's like who Hester Blumenthal is. He's like this mad chef that makes outrageous food, like custards made out of, I don't know, chicken or something, and then
Uh-huh.
I mean, ridiculous. His big thing is making foods that look like other foods out of other foods, which is a very medieval concept, by the way. They were very keen on that in the medieval era, like making meats look like fish and fish looks like meat and things like that. And I love the idea of her going slightly mad and then just producing all this food, which then has to be like got rid of.
Two or three of them at any given time, and she's got all this food.
And also, when they have people in from other cultures, she starts making the food from their culture. It's like you never really know when you open that salad for breakfast what's going to be underneath. You see, and I like idea, and I don't know where she came from though. She just kind of like, I needed something creepy in the that's a very good example. Molly turned up because I wanted Peter to walk into the folly, and then I wanted it to be like, oh, look at this, all this dust and dust, and I wanted that air of cobwebby kind of like, Mrs. Haverf, whatever her name is from the book, kind of like neglect and like sleeping as if the place is asleep. And then I wanted something creepy, and I just came up with Molly with her teeth and
Yeah.
Woody a maid's outfit and looking like something out of a Japanese horror movie. Although she's not Japanese looking, I didn't realize a lot of people thought she was Japanese. I go, why have you put this Japanese? No, she's not Japanese. She just got the long black hair. That's the thing that Peter is reacting to, and I just invented her, and then I had to come up with a reason why she was there and who she was and where she came from. And I didn't have that until book 5 or 6. Really, I didn't know Molly's backstory until book 5. And then I suddenly realized where she was from, and I went, "Oh, okay, well that explains Molly then." And then,
Yeah.
so the only trouble is, as soon as you do that, it starts getting complicated. Because as soon as I knew what Molly was from, then it raised the possibility of there being other people like Molly, and so therefore, then suddenly I've got Foxglove, and it's like, oh God's sake, and why are you? It's really annoying.
But you know what? It worked out. I mean, when he realizes, I mean, it's just the tip of the iceberg, but when he realizes it's like, oh, Molly is spoiler, then, it's like you could see the wheels turning, and it was like all of this other stuff made sense now, and all is right in his world. Now things are going to progress, of course, but yeah, I think Molly was a brilliant character. She, a lot of comic relief, a lot of good ambiance in a scene.
She's a bit like Wednesday. If Wednesday Addams had an older sister.
Yeah.
in the she's the fact that she delights in coming up behind Peter and like, scaring the shit out of him just by standing there silently.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, and Peter's got kind of inured to it now, but it's like it was a lot of fun the first kind of you can't keep things going. You have to avoid what's known as Flanderization with characters, which is when a character starts to do, which is based on Ned Flander, and they stop being rounded and just become exaggerated. A couple of characteristics become more and more exaggerated until that's all they are. They're just a series of catchphrases, and
right.
Very difficult to avoid that because everyone loves everyone loves Molly creeping up behind people, and everyone loves the bad cooking and everything else. But you have to be careful not to just make that all the character is,
right?
Or sometimes better to rest them a little bit, and so that when they come back, it's like so they're not in every scene, so they're not always there. They're sometimes they're more in the background, sometimes they're more in the foreground, and you do that to kind of. And I like to do that. I like to rest characters. I like to rest my background characters. And partially I do that for realism. For example, when Peter is out of his force area, it's not going to be Sewell and Stephanopoulos who are doing
exactly
because that's not their area. It's going to be a different, it's going to be a different DCI. It's going to be a different team. Like, for example, he's up in Aberdeen dealing with a completely different set of people because with their own problems. And I like to do that because A, it's realistic, but B, it also stops them from just you getting into too much of a routine, which I know is upsetting because when I'm reading a book, I always get to the point where my favorite characters are not in it. I'm like, oh, I like that character. Why isn't it in it? I'm just going to skip through this one really quickly until I get to the next one.
Oh no, I think it's a good way to kind of reset and revitalize, because like you said, if everybody is on the page all the time, then what is to distinguish them?
Also, there's too many characters now. There's just way too many characters. I did a list of them the other day, just of the regulars, and I was just going, there's just way too many characters now. I can't have them in every book because there's just too many. They just, you can't come up. This is where established authors tend to end up with their books getting longer and longer and longer. It's because they have all these lovely characters and they want to give them something to do. And the next thing you know, your book is 250,000 words long and can be used as a building material. I'm looking at you, Goblet of Fire.
Yeah.
To build houses.
Well, speaking of houses, how do you decide what to blow up? Each book, Peter destroys something. How do you decide?
That's a calumny. That's a calumny. Occasionally, nothing blows up. But frequently, nothing. Sometimes it blows up.
Yeah.
I didn't blow up anything in book 3. Book 4, that wasn't his fault.
Well, okay, so we'll strike that one off his record.
Things tend to blow up around him. He's very rarely blows something up directly, you know. Admittedly, in the last book, he did.
Yeah.
It wasn't his fault though. Just you know, I don't. I things just get out of hand and something explodes. Usually, that's just basically you know. I'm with Peter on this one. It's not his fault. It's not his fault that things explode when he's around.
Oh my God, every time they tell him, and try not to blow this up, and he's like,
Now,
well, it's not my fault.
it's that thing you see. Is, you know, he hasn't really done it that often, but once you get that reputation, it's going to
Yes.
everyone, and everyone thinks it's hilarious. Like they're doing
Uh-huh.
it because they think it's funny to keep telling him, "Oh, don't blow up anything." And then I like the idea of he's got this reputation now, so that when he goes outside London, people go, "You can come here, but you've got to promise not to
Yeah.
explain anything while you're here."
Well, am I misremembering? Wasn't like in, I don't think it was book one. It might have been book two. There was a pair of ambulances that went off the rails.
One ambulance.
One. One. Okay, we'll downgrade it from there.
Ambulance, and everyone thinks you destroy ambulances for a living.
Oh my goodness gracious, that's funny. Okay, so I could sit here and talk to you all day about all your different characters and what I love about them and pick your brain about all that stuff. But I want to bring us around to the different formats you have. I mean, this went from the first novel to now you've got novellas, you've got RPG game. I just saw you've got comics, and then you've had options for the books for TV and film, but of course option doesn't mean guaranteed. So what do you, first of all, how do you feel about your story being in so many different formats? Not so much do you have a favorite, but you know, what do you like about each one? What does each format bring to the overall series for you?
Okay, well, to do them in order, right? Obviously, novels. Okay,
Uh-huh.
get paid. Right, novels. Right, and which novels are great because they are the closest thing to telepathy we'll ever have. Right, it goes out of my brain onto the page, out off the page into your brain. Right, that's about unmediated communication as you know you're going to get telling a story, except maybe just telling a story to someone face to face, and that that's a lot of fun. And the thing is, once you have a successful, my books were much more successful than anyone thought they were going to be, including me, right? And so you get juice, right? You get power, right? So you think, right, what can I do with this power? And one of the things is, oh, I've always wanted to do comics. So I had what's known as an IP in the trade, right? An intellectual property that was worth something. And then you can take that and you can take it to Titan Comics in this case and say, look, I've got this IP, you can use it as long as I can write the comics, and that's what I did. But I wrote the comics with my friend Andrew Cartmel because he'd written comics before, and he's got an eye for detail. I've crap at my eye for detail, right? And you really need someone with an eye for detail who will then look at the pages of art as it comes back and go, no, that's not in the script, that has to change. And he's also much more ruthless than I am, and so therefore he's very useful for that. Because I'm like, oh, I'm like totally like, oh no, man, it's just totally fine. I know he's completely wrong, but you know, I can't be bothered. Lazy, right? I think we've established lazy, right? Now the novellas are a different thing. Subterranean Press came to me and said, do I want to do a limited edition novella? Which they do. I mean, that's what they specialize in. They do like 3,000 and they sell them, and they're lovely barrel, lovely acid-free paper and everything with my signature on them. And I thought, oh, I haven't done a novella. So I did a novella, and I discovered the beauty of novellas. And the beauty of novellas is about halfway through a normal novel, which is about 45,000 words, right? You get to a point where you're a bit sick of it, to be totally honest. You're like, oh, I've been writing this thing, because you've usually been writing it for about 2 months by that point, 2-3 months. You think, oh God, I'm so sick of this book. Right. But the great thing about a novella, you get to that point and you've finished.
You're done.
So it's like, yay, the end, off you go, next. So it's like it's kind of like the snack form of writing, right? I mean, short stories are actually harder than that. Short stories are hard because they're actually quite, unless you have a short story brain, which I don't have. The short story brain is like, I have this idea for a story that will be exactly 8,000 words long, yay, right? But no, I can't do it. I find that very difficult to do. So novellas are just the right length. Novella, crunchy length. So that's how those formats came. And then obviously I mean, people were trying to option it before it was published because
Uh-huh.
what's known as defensive optioning. So a company like Warner Brothers, or in my case, Sci-Fi Channel, or as it's spelt now, the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't notice. I know that as a piece of rebranding, that's the stupidest. It's the stupidest thing ever. Sci-fi, stupid, stupid, stupid. Right? They tried to option it, but it was fairly clear to me they were optioning it as a defensive measure rather than in that if they did another urban fantasy, this would kibosh any competition coming from my direction, and they didn't know what it was. They had no idea what the thing was about, and so then I've had an option, and an option, and an option, and an option. I think I'm on my fourth option now. Or rather, we're not doing it an option. We're trying a different technique whereby I form my own company and then go into collaborative with another company to do it.
Oh,
Which,
wow.
yeah, so you retain your own rights. It's the new thing amongst writers. No more pushing us around, man.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, I've got so used to being my own man now. I started as a script writer, but I've got so used to being on my, writing my own stuff and being, especially now that I've become successful. So I've got to that wonderful uneditable stage. I mean, I hasten to say I actually do listen to my editor, but I don't have to. It's entirely optional, and so it's that wonderful sense of freedom where you no longer have it. So I hate work. I mean, I hate being told what to do, and I hate doing work, and so therefore this is like the perfect situation for me. I'm not in a hurry to get back into television where, even though it's my IP, people will be telling me what to do because they're
Right.
paying for it. And it will be an enormously expensive TV show, which means there will be, people in New York and Los Angeles who will be sending me memos, going terrible memos, and saying it's going to be 10% funnier and stuff like that. And this is, I'm not sure I want to go and do that again. So I part of me really, really wants it to be a TV series, just because you get to watch it, right?
Yeah.
Someone doesn't have to build the bleeding folly,
Mhm. I can just see it the way you have written it. I mean, it really does come alive. I really think if the work itself, if the money itself were no object, right? This would really be a successful visual
Yeah, but the more money,
story.
the more executives you have, and the more executives
Yeah.
you have, the more things that can go wrong. The less control you have over it.
You know what? People have been having real success in Kickstarter lately.
No, I'm not doing a Kickstarter. Apart from anything else, it's very important to me that I focus on what I'm good at, which is writing. So
Yeah. Can you remember when you first held the very first book in your hand? And do you still get that same sense of accomplishment when you held book 9 in your hand?
that wasn't the very first book I've ever written. So I kind of was, I'm one of those people that said I had about 25 years of writing experience before Rivers of London came out. No, I get a thrill every time I see it on a shelf in a shop, right? I just get,
Yeah.
every time I hit the charts, every time I go up to like into the top 50 on Amazon, or even if it's like, for some reason Amongst Our Weapons is #1 in religious education or something like that. I just thought, what?
Where did that come from?
What happens if you don't actually employ anybody? You rely on algorithms and stuff to do your work. But my point being is, I get a thrill. I don't read reviews anymore, though, because the one thing you have to do after a while, it's impossible not to read reviews when you start out. But after a while, you have to stop reading reviews because it just distracts you.
Yeah.
And they're usually contradictory anyway, because everyone has like a different thing they like or don't like about a book, and so therefore, more drama, less drama, more money, less money. I mean, yeah. So you start to learn to rely on the opinion of people around, certain people
Right.
you trust. And people who know about the carpentry of writing, who are more likely to say something like, I think the beginning's a bit too long. I think you need to get your climax in a bit earlier. That's just actually useful kind of like criticism is what you actually need. I always go, no, I like it the way it is. Thank you. And the author So that's just the way it's going to be.
That's just the way it's going to be.
I'm sorry. Well, I want to write a book that's 700,000 pages long. I'm going to do that. No, I thought I would.
Yeah. Well, obviously the novellas chronologically fit with the novels. How does the comic books, do they overlap? Do they share some of the same
They're
content?
what's called interstitial, right? Which means they lie in between the novels. Like the
Okay.
novellas. They're like the novellas, and they lie in between the novels. So they're adventures. They're kind of other adventures that Peter is having, which can get a novel.
Right. So chronologically, you could, in theory, go from novel to novellas to comic books and carry this. There's not a whole lot of over or repeating.
I don't think the comics are for everyone, to be honest. Not everyone likes to see pictures of the characters. They like to imagine the characters.
Mhm.
But also, comic books, the emphasis is on different things. So it's a visual medium, and so there tends to be more action and less kind of like interiosity in a comic. So some people, not everyone's going to like the comics. Not everyone likes comics, and not everyone can read the comics because they're visually impaired or something. In which case, the comics are bloody awful. So I've tried to make it so you don't have to read the comics.
Gotcha.
That's it. They're for fun. I did them because they're fun. I wanted to do them because that would be fun, and I want people to read them and have fun. I don't want people to feel obligated to read them. I don't want to go, I hate graphic novels, but if I don't read them, I'll miss out. You won't miss out on anything, right? You won't.
Right.
Nothing that will get referenced in a later book that won't be explained, right? I will explain it, even if it's just like 3 lines. And that's basically what I try and do with the comics, because they're fun. They're supposed to be fun. So are the novellas. They're supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to kind of like write essays about it. Although apparently I'm a set book at some universities, which is always nice.
That's pretty exciting.
If I've been a set book in your course on science fiction or something, I apologize unreservedly.
Well, reading is fun for me, so I can attest, as on behalf of all of your readers, that your books are fun, and I hope you have as much fun writing them. Through all of the other things that you have to go through to create the books and frustrations here and there, I think ultimately I hope you have as much fun writing them as we do reading them, because we love them.
I love reading. Thank you very much, but I love reading. Do not worry, right? I'd rather be doing this than just about anything else. So I don't think to myself, oh no, I have to write a novel.
Yeah.
I really don't. Even when I'm horribly late and people are phoning me up and going, when's that book due? I don't feel like that. I don't. It's never work. It's way too much fun to be work.
Oh, I love that. I love seeing people passionate about what they're doing. So yes. I'm glad you love it.
Thank you.
Well, Ben, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me.
That's all right.
I've loved it. I hope that everybody who watches goes and picks up 10 copies of your book and hands them out as holiday presents or birthday presents or whatever.
I'd just like to say, I bought back the rights for the ebooks, the first 3 books, right? And to make sure that no one can go without an ebook, right? We've re-released them independently as ebooks in America. This is in America. We also took out the first 2 books were heavily localized for America, and we've basically reverted them to the English text. If you've been listening to them, I always found this hilarious, right? The text was localized, but when they did the audio, it was the English text. So it's like, well, Cobner is just doing basically the book as they are given in Britain. So I don't know, that must cause confusion for some people. Yeah. So these should be available in all good ebook stores or wherever you buy your ebooks in all the formats. Nooks and
and the first book, the original title in America has been restored, right? It's not
we reverted the title to Rivers of London, because it's confusing for people why I call it the Rivers of London series if it's called Midnight Riot.
Yeah.
Also, worse, people are buying copies of Midnight Riot thinking it's another book and then getting really upset, which is what happens.
Yeah, I listened to them in audiobook, so I listened to the original English text. But yeah, I like the idea. I mean, I could see why Midnight Riot might have been the title based on what was happening in the books. But River of London, I don't understand why it wasn't River of London.
They thought it sounded too much like I don't know, a guidebook or something. I don't know. I mean, you have to trust your publishers a little bit.
Right.
So I think they had reasons.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Whatever.
There's no excuse for that cover though. Let's not go into that.
Yeah.
But we have bought those. We bought those 3 back for that because also I was owned by 2 separate publishers, which is not a good position to be in. So I bought those 3 back, and because before they found out that there was going to be a TV series, the price went up basically.
Whoops. The smart thinking on your part, though.
By the time they read that, by the time they hear that from this podcast, you see, it'll be long gone. It's too late.
Well, I really hope whatever format readers out there, subscribe to, ebook, print,
audio with Cobner.
and oh my God, he's fabulous. He is fabulous. You lucked out with him. He's
oh God, yes. No, I wake up every morning praising Cobner.
Yeah.
You're not become so famous that we would get expensive. He's way more famous now than he was when he started.
Yeah.
Oh, Cobner's getting famous.
Even when I read the book, I read it with his voice in mind. Like that's the voice in my head when I'm reading it myself.
I have to say, when I'm writing Nightingale now, it's Cobner's Nightingale, because I didn't, it's that kind of very slow, deliberate delivery that he gives Nightingale. So like, Peter, I think you'll find blowing up the Tower of London was not the best possible. It's just that kind of.
Oh my goodness gracious! Oh my goodness. Well, Ben, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is
thank you. I've loved it. I hope everybody, picks up your books, shares your information around. Very, very, very fabulous story and world you've created. So thank you.
I'm gonna have coffee.
Yay!